Hello, 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 and welcome to today's episode of Her Version. This podcast is dedicated to sharing stories of struggle to triumph, a platform that allows individuals to tell their truth in order to inspire and uplift others. For those of you that are new to this podcast and like content like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you follow, like, and share. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria. Let's jump right in. I love it when the audience starts coming in before we barely even get started. For those of you that are jumping on, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for supporting Renee and her journey today, speaking to us and the Her Version platform. The Her Version platform is built on storytelling and the understanding that many times our greatest learning experiences come from listening to other people's stories. Today, I am speaking with an amazing woman, Renee Hill. She is married to Tom Hill, and they have 5 phenomenal children and 4 grandchildren. She is an only child to parents who have been married for 52 years. She is a university professor, and her favorite thing to do is read. Renee encourages the people around her to dream and believes you can make your dreams a reality with some planning and pivoting in your life. She is here to share some of her journey and some of her challenges in order to inspire all of us to live our best life. Welcome, Renee.
Thank you.
I want to ask you, in your journey, from beginning to end, from second grade till now, I'm sure that there's been an array of, challenges and struggles that you've been through. Do you mind sharing with us one of the challenges that you've been through and what you learned from that challenge?
Absolutely. Yeah. Hang on one second. Having issues all of a sudden, of course, because I'm, live with you. All of a sudden I have to clear my throat. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
So what I want to kind of talk about, something that for a long time I could not discuss because I was ashamed. And as I realized how many other people struggled with the same thing, but also had no one to talk to because other folks were ashamed too, I said, you know what? I'm just going to start talking about it. So that's what I'm going to do. So I want to talk about my struggles with mental health issues.
Love it.
You mentioned a second ago, how does like the word inclusive or inclusivity impact the African American community? I will say that, obviously mental health issues impact people from across cultures, across races, across socioeconomic status. But my experience as an African American woman is that in the Black community, you don't talk about it. You don't admit to having any kind of a concern with mental health. Things are getting better now, but when I experienced my concerns, it was just, you do not talk about it. You, quite frankly, you don't even admit it or acknowledge it to yourself. So I was diagnosed, I'm going to say it was like the early 2000s. I was diagnosed with clinical depression and also anxiety. And it took a long time for me to even get diagnosed because, well, for one, I didn't know what was happening to me. I went from almost feeling like I was just normal one day, and over a course of about a week, I just got worse and worse, and just feeling like I was in the dark, literally in the dark. I could not stop these spiraling, circling thoughts about how awful life was, that I was never going to be able to succeed. I was not a good enough person. I'm certain that all of this stemmed from guilt. I mentioned about being a single mom. I'm also a Christian woman. And so, the way that I grew up in the church, you don't get pregnant unless you're married. And so I carried this guilt with me about how I had let my family down. I had let God down. I was just not good enough. I was never going to be good enough. I wasn't a good enough mom. I would never learn to be a good mom. I I didn't deserve good things, and just I couldn't stop those thoughts. Now, at the time, my first son, was probably about, I'm going to say 6 or 7, maybe 8. Um, and I, I'm sad to, think about it now, but at my lowest point, I was not getting out of the bed. I'm not 100% sure how he ate, because I don't recall making breakfast, lunch, or dinner. I do know I got him to school. I remember that. I don't remember being able to. I know that I couldn't drag myself out of bed to do anything but use the bathroom and go right back to the bed.
Wow.
It was awful. And like I said, I didn't even know it was happening to me. I didn't even realize that I wasn't leaving the bed until a friend, said to me, um, you haven't left this room for like about a week and a half, right? And I didn't know. I honestly didn't know. All I wanted to do was sleep. My brain hurt because I couldn't stop the spiraling thoughts. Um, I remember at one point feeling so low that all I could think was, the only way that this ends is if I die. So it wasn't that I really wanted to kill myself. It was that I was convinced that I would never not feel that way. And so the only thing to do was to be done with life. There was just no way. I
Wow.
started asking God, just please take me in my sleep. And I would wake up the next morning and be so angry that I was
Wow.
awake. It was really difficult. Um, and I just knew something was wrong. I just didn't know what it was. Honestly, at that point, I was in a PhD program, and I'd heard the word depression, but I had applied it to other people because in my mind, Black people didn't get depressed. We
Yeah.
just dealt with it. We just kept on going. Also, I felt like I didn't have the luxury of being depressed because I was a mom and I needed to make sure that my son, didn't have a crazy mom. In my mind, I was crazy.
Yeah.
But thankfully, that same friend just kept, encouraging me. You have campus resources. You go to Florida State University. There's resources. Why don't you go to the student health center? And it took a while for me to finally do it, but I did. I finally went, and that's when I started to learn so much about
Wow.
myself and about what depression actually is, and that it's treatable. And it doesn't mean that you're defective or that you're crazy. It means that just like with any other body part, something needs to be corrected, something needs
Yeah.
to be worked on and concentrated on.
Yeah. For those that are listening live right now, I'm going to ask this question because I'm assuming they're resonating with your story. Uh, is this a counselor? Where does one go when they're in college to get this help? The nurse? Like, I don't even know how that works.
Um, well, I guess every campus is different. At Florida State University, and I do know that where my university now, University of Maryland, there is not only just a student health center, there's
Okay.
also a specific area that focuses on mental health services, right? So I'm fairly certain that, say, in college, most campuses are going to have mental health services specifically for students to access.
Wow.
The issue, and this is across the board, whether it's on campus or whether it's a private practice, there's so much need and not enough providers. So what often happens is that once a person finally is able to say, I need help, and they can get themselves in, there may be a several week long to a several month long waiting period before you can even see a provider. That's the
Wow.
really hard part. So when a person is really low, it's sometimes it's just not even possible for them to get in to see someone.
Yeah. What would you suggest in that case?
To keep asking for help, to go back every day or call every day and say, do you happen to have a cancellation? Can you please give me some referrals to somewhere else that I can call? um, be honest with friends and family who you trust and say, I need to see someone. I'm not okay. Can you help me? And and I can promise you, your friends and your family will get on the phone and just start making random phone calls to places that offer mental health services, and you'll be able to get in at some point. There's also now, thankfully, when I was going through this, this wasn't an option, but now there are online services. where you should be able to get in within a matter of days, if not the same day. And there, it's virtual. You can do it from the comfort of your home or your car, and that it's just key to get somebody to start talking with you to get you on a plan to getting better.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you for mentioning that. I kind of, that's a really actually good suggestion with that. I want to ask, I had that same, I really resonated with you when you said, you didn't feel like you had a right to be depressed because you were a single mom and you had to like do all of the things. And we, in my case, not to project my story onto you, but like I got pregnant. So that's like my fault. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a right to complain about anything because I shouldn't have been doing that. So I felt the same, very similar feelings as you felt that created a lot of emotion inside of me of hearing you say that. I never got to a point where I was where you were, because of those thoughts. Like I just couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
So for individuals like me who are feeling all the same things, like are just like getting it, they're like, this girl is telling my story, but they're not in bed.
Mm-hmm.
What is that like? Can you describe the thoughts, the feelings, the environment, the vibrations that are happening to allow somebody to realize, whoa, I'm depressed and I need to take a step towards communicating that to somebody? Like, what does that feel like?
It's scary, Sabrina. Um, at first, for me, it felt, I, for a while, each day I thought, if I can just get through today, I'll be okay tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right. And so
Yeah.
well, I'd sleep. Honestly, I was sleeping probably 20 something hours a day. So I would sleep and I would say, it's just because depression is tired. I experienced it as being very tiring, I
Yeah.
mean, exhausting and painful. Literally painful. Like the way I described it is that my brain hurt. It literally, it wasn't a headache. It really felt like my brain hurt.
Wow.
And the simplest tasks were exhausting. Like literally, my mom knew something wasn't right. And again, she did not even attribute it to depression. It was, even after I was diagnosed, she couldn't really wrap her mind around that. It was kind of like, no, just you're down and some things have happened and that's understandable. You just need to pray and it'll be okay. And then, so that was it. That was the best advice that she knew to give me.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that kind of contributed to making it a little bit worse because then in my mind, I twisted that into, oh, wow, I'm so awful that God has left me.
Yeah. I totally
Right.
get that. Yep.
But so, yeah, so it was like brain ache. Um, there were, I could not stop thinking negative thoughts. I didn't, it seemed as though everything positive that had ever happened to me or that I ever knew to think about was inaccessible. I couldn't find those memories. I remember thinking, okay, I'll try to find a comedian. Maybe that'll help if I start laughing. And I remember it was the strangest feeling. I found a comedy show and I heard these jokes and they were hilarious and I could not laugh. Like I
Wow.
mentally knew that what was said was funny. I
Yes.
couldn't laugh. It was the weirdest thing. But what caused me to really realize, okay, I do have to listen to my friend that's saying you need to go and see someone. I went past just being like, okay, yeah, I just need to not wake up in the morning to starting to formulate a plan for how I was going to die.
Oof.
And I was rationalizing it. I rationalized, okay, well, I can't do certain things. It's like I can't have my son find me like this. That would be too traumatic for him. So even in that, I was still at least thinking my kid has to be okay, right? Even
Yeah.
again, it's a warped rationality because my kid would not be okay if I weren't around anymore.
Yeah.
But I didn't want him to find me, right? So I had rationalized that I was going to ask someone to take me to the store. And while we were on the highway, I was going to just open the door and fall out the car, let the cars
Wow.
roll over me. And that
Totally.
scared me.
Yeah.
That when I had that thought, it scared me. And I realized that was that moment of clarity where it clicked that this is not normal, Renee. this is not okay for you to keep thinking about. And that's what propelled me into the mental health services at Florida State's uh, Student Health Center.
Great. That's a great visual with that. And I can totally relate to all of that. I've had those same exact feelings. Um, so, exactly, if you're having thoughts that are not healthy towards yourself or anyone around you, that's a really good clue that you need to seek guidance from somewhere. I'm assuming, the counseling or the therapy. What do you call it with the college? What did you?
Both. I've called it therapy and counseling.
Okay,
So I did like talk therapy, and then eventually I did have psychiatric services where I actually had medication.
beautiful. Okay, um, so I want to talk a little bit about the importance of personal development, the importance of personal growth, and I'm assuming that within that ball of things that you were doing at that point in your life, that a lot of that was intertwined in that. I want to ask you, your own, through your own personal journey and recommendation, I guess, to the listeners right now. What would you say is the importance of, whether you're going through a mental issue or an emotional issue or not? What do you think, or where would you put the importance of learning more about, personal development, personal growth, mental and emotional health?
It's essential. So you know how people often say, "Hey, new parents, kids don't come with a manual. You got to kind of figure it out."
Yeah.
Well, the same is true about us. We don't come with a manual that says, "Here's the story of you. Here's what you need to do for your proper care and feeding." Right? We
Yep.
don't get that, and I think that we people in general and women specifically do not take the time to learn who we are. We don't take the time to accept that the person that we were 10 years ago is likely not the person that we are now, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And that we are constantly going to be in a process of learning more and understanding more about who we are, how we think, how we tick, why we react to things the way that we do. So I I cannot stress enough how important it is to take the time to constantly be learning about yourself, even if it's just little things along the way. It doesn't have to be these major aha moments about yourself, but it's
Yeah.
important to be open to, I still got to learn me. I'm going to be learning me for the rest of my life. And
Yeah.
that's actually really beautiful.
Yeah. How much time do you think you put into, learning about yourself? Is this a daily, a weekly, a monthly, a yearly? What's your personal experience with that?
I'm going to say that it's been a number of years that I've been, kind of, I call it doing the work, right? So doing um, the mental health work that was really important at first. So I did years of mental health therapy, counseling. I have been on medication to make sure. So one of the promises I made to myself after I've had two major depressive episodes. The first one was not as horrible. The one I was describing to you was the second one, actually. And I promised myself that I was never going to allow myself to be that low again. That was terrifying. And quite frankly, I don't deserve it. I don't deserve to be that low. And I said, I will never let that happen again. So it became really important to me to recognize what causes me to start going down those not so great paths of thinking, the stinking thinking, right?
Yes.
And and when I'm, again, I mentioned I'm prone to anxiety as well, so noticing what causes me to be anxious, being honest about what's happening to me at certain times when I have to say, you know what, I know I promised you I was going to go somewhere or do so. I can't do it. It's causing me too much stress, and I can't do it, right? And being okay with that. But so yes, I would say that I devote some part of my day to kind of check in with myself, to see, how are you feeling about yourself? Are you talking to yourself in kind ways? We say things to ourselves that we would never dream of saying to other people. I was really good at that at one point in my life, saying the most ugly things to myself.
Mhm.
And now when I find myself going down those paths, I'm like, wait a minute, that's not true. Don't say that. That's not true about you. And I switch the thought, right? I've gotten good at it because I've done the work, and I'm going to always do the work. I have a life coach, and that helps to keep me really focused on thinking about what do I have the ability to control, and what things can I let go and just say, you know what? I did not create that situation. I will not take responsibility for it. I'm not going to allow myself to feel guilt about it. Um, and I'm just going to move on.
Absolutely. Great advice. Great advice, 100%. You've got an inspiring story, darling. I love
That
that.
is so kind. Thank you.
I love that. Well said.